Bismillah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Guys, do you know that there is a tiny bit that can move by itself? So yeah, that project is called Tiny Bit Line Follower. But before I explain, I'm gonna introduce myself first. So my name is Yusuf Maulana Al-Falah from 7A class. Okay, so Tiny Bit Line Follower is a tiny bit that moves according to the lines in the track. So in this project, I'm making a tiny bit that can move according to the line in the track and can move by itself. To do it, you just need to program the microbit and then insert the microbit into tiny bit. Okay, so now I will show you the code for the tiny bit line follower. Okay, so here is the code for making the tiny bit moves. Okay, so first we put on start and then set index to 0. So let's just say that index is like the procedure or steps. How many steps does it take to get to the last finish point? So we are starting from 0 index. And then here is the function lurus. This block is used to create your own block like this. So the code for this is core control speed 1, speed 125. So the core moves at the speed of 125. And then if line sensor direct left state follow back line, then core control speed left speed 125. So if the and then if line sensor direct right state follow black line, then core control speed right speed 125. So what this means is if the tiny bit starts to get out of the track or maybe is getting out of the line, the sensor of the tiny bit can direct it back to the track by this code. So this code, it will, if the tiny bit is if the tiny bit is gonna leave the track, it is gonna redirect it to the original track. These two blocks. Okay, so now let's get into the program. So now let's get into the main code. So the first we put forever so that it moves forever, and then we put the if else if block, logic blocks. So if the index is 0, like if the steps is still 0 when it wanted to move, while millisecond is 1750, you call lurus set index to 1. So millis is millisecond, which if converted to seconds is 1.75 seconds. So it will, when the timer, so this project has timers. So if the timer is still not 1.75 seconds, the tiny bit will move forward with this command call lurus and then set index to 1 so the tiny bit knows that it has moved 1 step. Okay, so now let's get into the second one. If index equals 1, so if it has moves 1 step, then while the timer is still not 1.9 seconds, it will spin to the left at the speed of 125 and then set index to 2. So what this means is if the timer is 1.9 seconds left, if it's not more than that, the car will spin to the left or like change direction to the left, so it can have the so it can turn to the left. Correct. And then it will set index to 2, like to tell the tiny bit that it has turn left. And then most of the code is the same, just according to the line you coded. So now the third one is if the index equals 2, then while the timer is still not 2.45 seconds, do so the tiny bit will just move forward and then set the index to 3. So tell the tiny bit that it has moved 3 steps. And then the fourth one is if index equals 3, then while the timer isn't still isn't 2.6 seconds, then the car will turn to the right at the speed of 125. And then it will tell the tiny bit that it has moved 4 steps. So that if it has set to 4, the car will stop spinning. And then we've got if index equals 4, then while the timer still isn't 3.1 seconds, then the car will move forward and then tell the tiny bit that the index is 5, so it can move to the next program and then and then stop moving forward. And then we've got if index equals 5, while the timer still isn't 3.3 seconds, the car will spin left at the speed of 125 and then tell the tiny bit that it has moved 6 steps. And then the next one is if index equals 6, then while the timer still isn't 3.8 seconds, then the car will just move forward and then set index to 7. The block is to tell the tiny bit that it has moved 7 steps. And then if index equals 7, then while the timer still isn't 4 seconds exactly, then the car will keep turning right at the speed of 125 and then setting the index to 8 so that the tiny bit stops turning right. And then we've got the last one to go to the junior finish line. If index equals 8, then while the timer is in 5.2 seconds, then it will move forward and then set index to 9. And then we've got last block, this one. So if it has done all of the steps above, the tiny bit will stop, like just stop. Okay, so that is the program of the tiny bit line follower. Now I will show you the demonstration of the video. Okay, so that's why the tiny bit has so many programs. So if there is any turns, we have to program it ourselves. That's why I explain many programs in this block code. Okay, so I think that's all from me. Thank you for listening to my video. Sorry if my explanation isn't quite clear yet. And then the last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.